Testing.
Testing.
Testing. Let's bring it a little closer. Okay.
That's the end?
Welcome to the Review with Joy and Company, featuring conversations with best-selling authors as well as the hottest reviews with the authors you choose. We're inspiring the world through Christian literature. Stay logged on. We'd like to know, what are you reading?
Hello, hello, hello. Once again, you are tuned in to the Review with Joy and Company at Fishbowl Studios. And we have our fearless leader here that monitors our voices and our mics and produces everything just great. Mr. Victor, we thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Victor.
One of the trio is missing only momentarily. She's caught up in traffic, but she will be here. You won't have to listen to me all night because she will be here, so you'll get to talk to her. But before I go on and on and on, let's say hello to Rosemary LeGrand.
Hello, everyone. It's a delight to be in the midst of your company again this evening.
We have Joy Thaxton with us this evening, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about her, and then I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about her book, My Little David. She grew up in Gatesville in a large family that believed children made the world go round. After she married, she and her first husband welcomed 2 boys and 2 girls into their home, yellow paper dolls. I want to know about the yellow paper dolls. Those 4 children made her a grandmother of 5 orange paper dolls, and those 5 made her a great-grandmother of 6 green paper dolls. Now I have a question for you. Do you think in those family situations she's described there might be a story or 2 brewing? Well, I already know there's a story or 2 brewing. Joy says yes, emphatically. In fact, child-related adventures have provided her with stacks of stories to share. When asked what qualified her to write a book for children, she replied, being a mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother has provided lots of material, also a call from God and a willing spirit to obey. She lists her family and children as her #1 life accomplishment and describes them as blessings from God. Her legacy is to leave them with a knowledge of their loving God. And I want to tell you, before I go on and tell you any more about her, My Little David is a true example that she has done just that, because the dialogue in that book is what any loving grandmother would want to be to their grandchildren.
Thank you.
And
Thank
as
you.
a grandmother, I took some notes. Yes, studying accounting and computer programming at East Texas State University equipped Joy for the business world as well. She was licensed by the state of Texas as a private investigator. I like that. I'm pretty nosy, so I like that. She was the manager and auditor for Action TV and Appliance in the Dallas-Greenville area. She opened and operated her own business that included 5 stores from Waco to San Antonio, furniture, TV, and appliance stores, with warehouse and home offices in Waco. Her first husband passed away with cancer. She and Doug married in 1995 and have been married 30 years. She deserves an applaud with 30 years. She bought a Subway franchise in Gatesville. She had the building built and operated the restaurant until 1999. She was a supervisor for Hibbett Sporting Goods, opening the Gatesville store. She and her second husband, Doug, sold eBay a few years, then retired and traveled. She taught New Life behavior for 16 years at the prisons in Gatesville and trained as a chaplain's helper. She attended BSF for 8 years and taught in the children's classes 1 semester. Well, you can see Joy's well-rounded, and I could keep going on and on about all the books she's written for children and the avenue she believes God has called her to fulfill that calling. Please join me in welcoming Joy Thaxton.
Thank you. I am honored to be here.
Oh, we're glad to have you. Why don't you give everybody a little bit about My Little David?
My Little David is, the setting is rural Texas, and it's in it's mostly about my brothers. I grew up with 8 brothers and 2 sisters. I was number 10 of 11, plus lots of cousins around and everything. So we didn't even know grown-ups existed. It was just a child's world, you know, and that's a lot of stories there. But anyway, the story is it involves some of the things I just remember that happened back then, but some of them have. I use the character of my children, some of my children. I use the character of my brothers, my husband. They're all interwove in there.
You know, and I can see the rural setting plainly because I grew up in a rural area too, in about 90 miles from here, going toward Houston. Fairfield, Texas is where I went to school. But I was out about 19 miles from there growing up. But I could hear some of the things you were saying, you know, and I was like, I remember them saying things like that.
Yes.
So it was heartwarming for me, you know.
Right.
And I was raised by my grandparents. Well, as I told you, you won't have to listen to me all evening. Joy, our fearless #1 trio in the building. Joy Lewis.
Good
Take it
evening,
away.
everyone. I don't know why she says it like that. Don't ask me. I'm not paying her. She just does that whenever she has to.
But that's the truth. That's the truth, though, Joy.
Well, thank you guys for going on. And man, this is such an incredible book, Joy. It's nice to meet you in person.
Thank you.
And you know, I had a little thing. I wanted to make sure that this is Joy with an E.
Yes, this is Joy with an E.
Joy with an E.
You told us a little bit about the book, but I want to know just how much fun did you have writing this story?
Well, I had lots of fun
I
writing.
bet you
and
did.
We had, I'm a member of a critique group,
Uh-huh.
and we get together once a month and go over each other's stories, you know, and so we just enjoyed each other
Yeah.
reading the stories and back and forth each other's stories.
Oh.
And to me, it just brought up memories. The
Yeah.
more I would write, the more I'd remember.
Oh,
know.
I just, you know, I was feeling for you as I was reading the book, and I just was like tickled. And guys, this is really an endearing book. You've got to get your hands on this I'm telling you, you're going to get it for your young children, right? And young youth readers, but you're going to enjoy reading the stories too. They're just really fun. Did you have a favorite story that you told in this?
Well, Granddad blowing up the chicken coop was pretty funny. You know, and it was a lesson in patience.
Yes, it was. It was. It definitely was. And there are a lot of funny stories. All of them have really good messages that are not so hidden. So what are some of the lessons David learns throughout the story? Definitely the one on patience and how important that is.
Right, and that was in chapter 1, well, chapter 2.
Yeah.
The mongoose, he was having a lot of fun in that.
Okay,
But-
I want you to backtrack. Did you all get lost with the mongoose?
Yeah, because I was trying to figure out, was it just those tails and it was a fairy tale animal and it wasn't real? I was confused.
I knew it wasn't real.
No.
No, it wasn't
Yeah.
real.
It's not real, right?
It's not real.
Oh,
No.
No, it wasn't real. Mrs. Jones thought it was real.
yeah, she did.
Miss Hardy.
Miss
Hardy.
Miss
Miss
Hardy.
Hardy. Yeah. So just that was really funny though. That was really cool. But I got a visual of the mongoose, and then I realized, well, did he just use 2 rabbit tails to go do
He
that?
did. He did. 2
That was
raccoon tails.
Raccoon tails.
And that was actually my brother that did that. One of my brothers.
Uh-huh.
And he would he taught out at college for a while and actually took it out and scared some of the kids a few times, you know. But
that was
him.
funny. The mischievousness of boys, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I grew up with 4 brothers, so not 8, but 4. So and they were all older than me. So yeah, I can understand and identify with some of this mischievousness that was going on.
Some of the lessons you asked, though, what he was learning, Granddad was teaching him one time. He got I don't want to give away the whole story
No.
and everything,
Yeah.
but he got upset because somebody won something that he wanted to win. And so he was very disappointed, and Granddad taught him that he couldn't let his disappointment turn into anger. And his grandmother was always repeating, "Don't let the sun go down on your anger." And so he's learning all the way through it, learning obedience,
Right.
you know, and just that obedience and faith and action all go together.
Well, guys, I want to remind you that we're visiting with Joy, with an E, Thaxton, and we're talking about her book, My Little David. This is one of the most endearing, I think, books that we've read all season. I really do. I enjoyed it thoroughly, and you can get a copy of it. Just visit us at joyandcompany.org. Click on the photo of the book cover of My Little David, and it'll take you right to purchasing it. Look, we're going into spring, I know, but summer is like right around the corner. And what a great summer read for your kids this year. My Little David definitely is something that you want to share with your kids.
It was wonderful too, because we're going to continue to piggyback on what Ernest, Granddad, you know, what he talked about John, you know, when he won that BB gun.
Yes.
You know, one of the things that I really love that he spoke to Sam about is the fact that sometimes we pass judgment on people because we really don't understand what they're going through.
Yes.
And he also gave an example of the fact that when he's in school, he never smiles. But in that picture, you know, that in the newspaper, he was smiling. So
Yes.
then Granddad was sharing with Sam that God may have had him win that BB gun just so that he could feel important and just so that he could feel loved. You know, and sometimes that's what we do. We pass judgment on people because we really don't understand what they're going through. But
That's
if we
right.
look at them through the eyes of God, then we'll recognize and realize there's some underlying thing for the way they behave. You know, so I was really excited when I read that part about Granddad talking to Sam about that,
Yes.
about
Yes.
not passing judgment.
You know, that was a lesson for My Little David to learn.
Yes.
But how often as adults do we need to be reminded about that particular lesson, because we work in a workforce, or even sometimes in our church family if we're on auxiliary committees or in groups. Could be, and sometimes, most times, there's that person that just rubs you wrong and can be one step away from being a bully, especially on our jobs. But as believers, we do have to take the time to step back and enact this lesson that Mr. Ernest taught My Little David in this story. You need to get a copy of the book so you can get the full gist of what the lesson was, okay? See, we're not going to tell you we're not going to make you lose all of your thunder here. But we do want our audience to know what a delightful read this is. Visit us so you can get a copy of it. Rose, do we have to say hello to anyone?
Yes, Kelly Bird Fanning.
That's a daughter. That's my daughter. Hello, Kelly.
Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Kelly.
Thank you for jumping in the stream with us as we kind of go through your mother's book here. Anyone else?
Not now.
Not now? Okay. Well, you guys have something else because you know I'm about to go on.
Yeah, you go on.
Go on. Joy, tell me. I was interested in knowing, because you've got 2 other books published out there. Maybe we'll touch on them a little bit. But why was it important for you to tell this story?
Well, I think I had more fun with it, but actually, I met a young man on an airplane. I sat beside him. And it was on 911, and I actually misjudged him at first. And this same thing, and you know, I saw him sitting on the plane, and I thought, ooh, and I've been listening to all the 911 that day and everything, and it was a few years after 911. But anyway, he was from India, and he started talking to me when he woke up about I walked by him, and let me back up a little bit. I walked by him, and I thought, God wanted me to sit beside him, and I thought, oh no, this, not really. But then I just kept having that feeling, so I sat down. My husband sat down right beside me, and then I knew it was perfect because he wouldn't have followed me. And the guy told me when he woke up, like he needed to talk to me, and he was asking me questions. Why do I love my grandparents more than my parents? He was in college. He was having trouble with his parents and everything, and he asked several questions on love.
Oh.
And I had been wondering, well, what is my next book going to be about? And God just gave me that confirmation right there.
Yeah.
I had wrote down 3 things, but explaining love to children. And then those were the questions that we talked about.
It is amazing how God can take something and turn it into whatever he wants to turn about. Because who would have thought that? Rose?
I'm just sitting here in awe of how she took that small section and just multiplied it throughout this book.
Yes.
It's phenomenal.
It is.
Because every day that he got off that bus and went with his granddad, the granddad or the grandmother taught him something every day.
Every day.
Yes.
Every day.
Yeah.
Every day.
I loved the relationship that my little David had with his grandfather. And it reminded me of so many of my nephews and my dad, and how they had special relationships with my father, their grandfather, you know. And it like I said, endearing is the only word. I'm sorry, y'all. I just really have a limited vocabulary here. But that is the only word that I can think of that really describes this book and the moments. I mean, you're going to have so many. You're going to take a trip down memory lane like you had to do so often, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So how did your brothers and sisters feel? Did you approach them and tell them you were going to tell their stories?
Well, the hunting story in there and the mongoose story, that was one brother and his shenanigans, And so I told him about it, and he was just kept telling me more and more stories.
So he was on board.
Yes.
Oh, that's good. That's
And
good.
We had a little reunion before the book was published, and so he had told all the other brothers and sisters about it, and they were all pretty much on board with it. Of course, they told me some stories I couldn't write, but they told me a lot of stories.
I'm sure about that.
And they just said, be sure and change the name to protect the guilty. That was what they told me.
I'm sure they had a lot of fun with it. What were their, did you get any critique or comments from them after the book was published?
I haven't got a lot since it has been published. Some of them have had fun remembering things again,
Yeah.
and some of them said, I didn't do that, but they did.
Well, a couple of things are in play right here because number one, we all do have selective memory. We know that, right?
Yes.
We have selective memory, especially when you start sitting around the Thanksgiving table and everybody is telling, remember when you did this, that? No, I didn't do that. So
Exactly.
I do get that. I do get that. Rose, anybody else you want to say hi to?
No, but I want to ask about those glass eggs. Those I remember reaching my hand in the egg to get eggs.
In the chicken coop.
Chicken coop. Yeah. Well, we had it. It was a nest. Yeah. It wasn't a big one like they had. It was a long one, and they had their little top, but a snake was in there.
Ooh.
When I reached my hand in there.
Mhm.
So I knew what that was like. And we had a smokehouse. And one day I probably still got the scar from getting out of that smokehouse because it was a snake in there. So I've had my fill with snakes. But I had never heard of giving them a glass egg. Did that really happen?
That really happens, and
Really?
there is such a thing as a glass egg.
Oh.
Sometimes I think it's not only just for that, but when the snake swallows it, well, they're
it's
not going to
over.
make it.
Oh
It's
my
over.
goodness.
Yeah,
So-
because I guess it cuts their insides
Well,
out.
it
right?
They
cut him
can't
up
digest
bad where
it.
he was wrapping around
Yeah,
that
that
pole.
pole.
Yeah.
My goodness, my goodness.
I don't know
Well.
how he crawled away.
Yeah.
Well, I actually had a favorite of mine of the stories that you're telling. And listen, guys, we're talking about My Little David, written by Joy Thaxton. Don't forget to visit us at joyandcompany.org to get a copy of this really fun read. I thought of another word to describe it. It's a fun read because it will keep you smiling from cover to cover. But don't think that we're spilling all the tea now, because we're not doing justice. You've got to get this book and have your kids read it, and you read it along with them. And it'll open up conversations, taking you down memory lane. One of my favorite stories was, because I identified with it. I'm trying to think of it. You going to when he went to the fair. I was going to say circus, but it wasn't a circus. It was a fair. And he did something. I'm not going to tell him what he did, okay? But he did something that was so hilarious. And I could just see my brother. That's something my brother would have done, you know? And I just thought that was too funny, the way he treated his cousin.
Wow, wow.
That was my youngest brother.
That was your youngest brother? Okay.
Okay.
Well, kudos to the youngest brother, because he got something in on that one.
And the way he walked around the fence and then jumped off and
Did what he had to do.
wiped his hands together with confidence, wondering when am I going to win the prize?
Yes, yes.
That's his exact
Oh, my
personality.
goodness.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. That's
Oh, my
awesome.
goodness.
Well,
Well, we're not going to give the whole story, but I was intrigued of the fact that that little David, you know, he was so curious because he wanted to know why his granddad was calling him David. And I love the fact that when he went to Sunday school, when he went to church, and they spoke about David, and it was so fascinating that his mother was Jessie,
Mm-hmm.
he was the youngest son, and he had red hair, and that's where I'm going to leave it.
I
I'm not-
thought, with that part, I felt that he was well disciplined
Yes.
and had a lot of respect for his grandfather.
oh, yes.
To go there and stay attentive. He would get excited.
He wanted to.
He would say one day he didn't want to go to church and pull his cover all up over his head. But when he remembered what his grandfather told him was going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
and that what was going to happen in the service, he got excited. He wanted to go because he knew that his grandfather had a wealth of information, and he felt his grandfather had a secret about him.
Yes.
Being my little David.
Yeah.
And he was just intrigued about getting to the root of that.
I know, and he
Yes.
kept asking the granddad, was that the secret code?
Yes.
But I love the relationship, though,
Mhm.
that he had with his grandfather. You know, because sometimes it's difficult, you know, because sometimes you've lost your grandfather, you've lost your father, and you really haven't got that relationship with an individual. But he had really a fond relationship with his grandfather.
That's one thing that I hope too is young men and young women that don't have that relationship, they can share Sam's relationship
Yes.
with his
yes,
granddad.
Yes.
Exactly.
You know,
yes,
because
yes.
there's a lot of good granddads out there.
Yeah,
There
yes.
are.
Oh, my
I
goodness.
never knew either of my grandparents, you know, but this book, it reminds you that there's always someone there. Like, even it may not be a grandfather, but there's always that male figure that kind of steps in and becomes who you need to be. And so I think it's important that we teach our children, don't focus on what you don't have, focus on who you do have. Because God will send someone there to nurture you, and you'll have an uncle, a cousin, someone from your church family, you know, who's going to step in there and play that role, and you can develop that wonderful relationship
Wow.
with. So I was one of the messages that I got from reading this book also.
Well, his grandmother had a saying too that you pray for somebody, don't be surprised if God puts
Yeah.
you in that role.
Yeah, she was a very wise
She's a very
woman.
wise lady.
But
Yes.
you know what? I think she beyond what my little David learned. I think that Grammy showed women how they should be as wives and stand up for their husbands.
Yes,
Great
that's
lesson
Because
there,
she got
yes.
Hardy in check.
Yeah, she sure did.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
God provides, and you don't need to be talking about my man.
Yeah.
Just,
Yes.
just
Yeah,
get on.
yeah, she sure did. She sure
You
did.
know, and I love that, and that's what I thought about when I read it. Is that it's sort of like how you say, you can talk about your family, but nobody else can do it.
Exactly.
Exactly.
You know, and
Yeah.
that's what it made me think about.
Yeah.
And she stood steadfast in that, and that made David proud too.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
You know, Rose, I saw that when I read it, but it didn't really resonate with me until you just brought it out. That definitely wasn't. That's why you adults have to read this book along with your children, because there's nuggets in there for us too.
Yeah,
But
yes.
that was a perfect lesson and a much needed lesson that as wives we are the protector of our, we have to protect our family, our home, and our husbands. And it's, no matter what you're going through, it does not take away from the fact that this is your husband and you don't allow anybody to disrespect him.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
so that was great for you to bring that out. Now, let's talk about what was the difference? Let me put it this way. What was the difference? What was different about writing My Little David for you as an author from switching from If Only Donkeys Could Talk and The Desires of Sarah's Heart?
Well, my little If Only Donkeys Could Talk was about the same young man
Okay.
and his granddad. It was just a shorter little story about an experience that Sam had with his granddad, and it was his granddad basically in that story was just teaching him, when you have questions and want answers, go to the Bible and find your answers there. And Sam found a very interesting story in the Bible. And then the desire of Sarah's heart, that was my little girl when she was growing up, the middle girl. She had to have an elephant. She wouldn't settle for anything else for Christmas. And so her grandmother taught her a lesson from the Bible verse, the desire of Sarah's heart, that God will give you the desires of your heart, but sometimes his promises have obedience. You've got to obey
Yes.
for him to fulfill that promise.
Yes.
And sometimes he doesn't always fulfill it the way you want it filled,
Right.
but he fulfills it for what's best for you.
Yeah.
And so that's what was taught in the desire of Sarah's heart.
So it seems like these two stories, they were kind of like a prelude to My Little David.
Just having some fun writing.
Well, Geneva Massengale says, love this. Thank you.
She's my warrior. She's a God's encourager warrior, is what I call her.
Wow.
And she has, a few times I've thought, well, because the first book, I'm really competitive. I was in business. And I thought, oh, that didn't sell very good, and I didn't get it in a lot of children's hands. But she encouraged me to go ahead and keep going, and she's helped me get this one published a lot.
But you know what, when you said you didn't get it in a lot of children's hands, but if you got it in the one,
In one.
because he left the 99 to get one.
Yes.
So if you got the one, it don't matter about the
Yes.
99.
Yes.
You're an encourager too.
What
Wonderful.
I was curious, Joy, Whitney, you did work in the prison ministry. Did that influence your writing for children, and if so, how?
Well, one night I was sitting there, more so to publish than anything, because
Okay.
I was with the ladies, and it was always on my heart is why did we not teach them about God as they were growing up?
Mm-hmm.
Because we were teaching them as grown women,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but I just felt like if we had taught them as children, their path might have been different. Their journey might have been different.
Yeah.
And especially one night, I was, Janice Barnhill and I taught New Life Behavior, and she was teaching that night, and I was watching the girls and keeping an eye on the girls.
Mm-hmm.
We've been taught through security, you watch their hands and their movement, but I was watching their face. God just kind of drew me to their faces that night.
Yeah.
And some of them, tears were going down their faces, and some of them were just, Janice was teaching a class on how much God loved them and or loves them, and that night their faces just looked like they just couldn't believe it, you know. And so I started thinking about some of the questions the kids my children had asked me that night, and how I'd answered them and things like that. And so I grabbed a piece of paper, and that's when I wrote, "If only donkeys could talk." It was wrote in prison. So
That's absolutely incredible.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I did write that one that night. Janice told me later, she said, boy, the girls sure did pay attention. They saw you over there writing. I think they thought you were taking names.
Well, it seems like the message itself, if they were crying, that message was pulling on their hearts also.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is beautiful. I just saw that when I was reading up about you, that you worked in the women's ministry, and then it just kind of jumps to these stories, and I'm wondering, is there a connection here? There has to be. You know, I'm so glad to hear your response to that. That's very nice,
That's
very
wonderful.
good. The heart of God.
The heart of God.
I love it. I love it. And you'll love it too. Just visit us at joyandcompany.org and get a copy of this fun and endearing book, My Little David. It's written by Joy Thaxton. And you know what would be great, even like you have summer Bible, what do they call it? Bible, they don't call it Bible school. You know how they have the summer Bible camp? Well, let's just call it that. This would, huh? No. It's with church.
It's like, it'd be like a week or 2 weeks
Yes,
in the summer.
in the summer,
Yeah,
summer Bible
vacation
camp,
Bible school.
vacation Bible
Oh,
school. That- You can tell I don't have children, right? But so like for those of you that are involved with vacation Bible schools, I know right now you're planning your curriculum and things that you would do for that. Let me tell you guys, I'm putting a little, you're going to really thank me for this. This would be a great book to study and have the kids read during vacation Bible school. It's a very easy read. The main character is a third grader, but I tell you, he's definitely learning and giving us nuggets for adult living, you know, Christian living. So wonderful tool for you to have in your youth ministries and also just with your kids. I love it. I'm
I
a
think-
seasonal girl here. I always think certain reads for summer, spring, you know? Yeah.
I think I'd like her to tell about the illustrations, how they came
Yeah.
about.
Oh,
Yeah,
great
yeah,
point,
yeah.
Rose. Wonderful.
Ask that too.
Well, Emily Casoro is the illustrator of the book, and she did all the large pictures in the books. But some of the small pictures in the book was my sister-in-law, Geneva, and her grandchildren. They started reading some of the stories before it was published, and so they started drawing the pictures. And they drew some little pictures, and I just wanted them in the book. It was just a personal thing, but they did a really good job on
They
some of the
did.
small
Because it
pictures.
that was endearing, because I had read that, you know, that's what had happened. And I'm just, you can't tell, I mean, they did a good job.
Yeah.
And
Excellent.
they just had fun doing it. I would go
Yes.
over there, and they were all around the table, all drawing pictures and laughing and having a good time. And
They
that
did
was-
really a good job because especially with the chemistry.
Oh,
You know?
that's really, yeah, I liked that too. I liked all of them. It would be hard to choose one that kind of stood out, because they were all good. And they matched the story that
story,
was being
yes,
told
yes,
so well.
yes,
You
yes.
know, I think it's wonderful that you use the creativity of the children in a children's book. I love that.
And I think it's going to be good too because Sam, he was so obedient, to his grandfather, his grandmother, his mother, So I believe when children read Little David, it will enable them, it will encourage them, to be obedient to their parents. It was well written.
It was.
Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead, Rose.
I think when you look at everything that happened in the community that he grew up in, it goes back to the fact you hear people say it takes a village. Well, when you were growing up in a rural area, it was a village. Everybody was your mama, your daddy.
Yeah.
You was getting a whooping from everybody.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
mess up.
Yeah.
This one gonna whoop you. They gonna tell your mama. She gonna whoop you. Your daddy gonna whoop you. Everybody gonna whoop you. And that, I think sometimes now we need to have, I'm not saying whoop somebody's children, but we need that sense of community where there's respect for other, elders that you're around, your neighbors, and that they watch out for children and just bring some of that back.
You're right
Yeah.
about that, because I was born in the Caribbean too, and then we had a community. My mother could leave me and my neighbor would take care of me while my mother is gone, and my neighbor would be able to reprimand me and tell me do this, and encourage us, Now you had a lot of little sayings like the axe is in the pit. What does that mean?
The ox is in the pit.
The
The ox is in the pit.
Well, in the King James version of the Bible it was mentioned in there. I'm not sure the verse right now or anything, but when Jesus was wanting to perform something, a miracle on Sunday or something like that, well, basically they said, well, if the ox is in the pit, you're going to pull it out on a Sunday.
Okay.
It was
okay.
an ox. We need to find the verse on that.
That's okay.
Well,
Saying ox is in the pit, I'm thinking, what ox is in the pit?
Yeah.
But thank you so much for that.
And Grandpa would use that.
Yeah, all the time.
Yes.
Joy, I want you to know that Jana Lewis Perez was trying to help you out again. She said vacation Bible school.
thank you, Jan.
Thank you, Janet.
I don't know how I lose these simple words, but I do sometimes. Another thing that really touched me about this book is the stories. They take place in a rural town, and my little David and his grandfather are actually doing things that children today may not even be able to conceive of. Because fun and what I do with my uncles and my grandparents, well, maybe not your grandparents, possibly so though, is on, playing games on the computer. And it's challenging to actually get children outside and to be creative and to do things outside. And I think this story for modern day children, it can make them curious and make them want to go outside because there's a lot of fun outdoors,
Yes.
But children today, many of them, not all, because we still have rural communities out there, but a lot of children today, especially those that are inner city and some suburban, they don't get the idea of going fishing. They don't have the experience of going hunting, And pray tell, who would have the experience of building a cellar? Am I telling too much? I'm sorry.
No.
But,
Not
it's things that the little David is experiencing that affected his life. It was a lot of fun. And these kids today would have no relationship and be able to even identify with those type of activities. So I think the book is actually exposing children to some other areas that they could be enjoying.
But you know what? I think that concept was lost with the baby boomers. I had a cousin recently pass away, and he took his little grandson fishing, hunting with him, and he was so just devastated at losing his grandfather.
Yeah.
And I thought about all the memories that he had.
Mm-hmm.
And even in the program, they had pictures of him with his fish and everything. So I think it has to do with when you look at the next generation, the kids today, their parents wasn't doing nothing. So
Yeah.
they can't teach them nothing because they don't know how.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, so it's going to take a grandparent or somebody in an earlier generation, unless you had somebody that was raised up maybe in a rural area or they had a family that liked camping or something. It's just not there anymore.
You're right. You're right. And I think parents should purpose to connect children with nature and to get them outside and to really stir up their creative juices like that. You know, it really builds stamina. And it's not just for little boys, it's little girls too, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I can remember when we got our first television.
I know, me too.
Me too.
I'm showing my age, but I can certainly remember that. And
I was so excited.
Me too.
well, I wasn't. I had all these kids around me to play with outside, and when they'd go in and watch television, that was like, what is the matter with y'all? Let's go out and play.
Well, you know what?
I do know.
The reason I was so excited is because I was by myself. I lived with my grandparents and my younger uncles and aunts. They had gotten grown and gone. And we were like 19 miles out in the rural area. There was no kid within 10 to 15 miles of me. So my playmates was chickens. You know, I mean, I would make mud cakes for the chickens and have them lined up like they in my little kitchen. And so when I got a TV, it was like, oh my God, it was like a human, you know.
Yeah.
So I think if I had had somebody to play with, I think it would have been different. And I had some cousins that lived up the hill and down, and I would go to their house. And I wouldn't want to leave, and they used to laugh at me because my grandmother come to the top of the hill, and she'd be calling for me, and I'd just be crying, and they would be laughing. It was horrible.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. You know, I think we're all, because of my little David, wanting to take a trip down memory lane, and I definitely had a story I wanted to tell. I'm looking at the time. I'm going to pass that story up because we've got a few housekeeping notes that we have to do. First and foremost, I want to remind you, we're visiting with Joye Thaxton tonight. We're talking about her book, My Little David. And as we all agree, it is just an incredibly fun story to read to your children, read with your children, and it's a very endearing trip down memory lane. So visit us at joyandcompany.org to get your copy of My Little David. And if you're in the DFW area, I want to remind you that annual Lenora Roller Jewelry Art Show, the exhibit is still going on until March 17th. So if you haven't witnessed it yet, go out there because it's just a really nice, beautiful art exhibit. And on March 2nd, you can join them for a roundtable discussion on the importance of investing in underrepresented artists. And this is going to be at the Lenora Roller Jewelry Art Show honorary chair, Dr. John Burnett. He'll be hosting this discussion. And also there'll be an optional tour of the Lenora Roller Heritage Center Museum. This is all brought to you by the Tarrant County Black Historical and Genealogy Society. So visit tarrantcountyblackhistory.org for more details. You know, a really great Saturday afternoon thing, and the weather is so beautiful these days. Go out and enjoy that exhibit. And I am going to let Rose or Rosemary, whichever one of you want to jump in and tell them about the CLAs. I think she
Oh,
finished.
no, she's handing it off to me. People have been emailing me, people have been texting me, when is the CLAs? When is the CLAs? Well, the CLAs is April 6th, 2024. The doors open at 4 p.m. and the grand event starts at 5. And we're going to be at the St. Jude Event Center in